Hello, Create Schools. Today we're going to look at the successes and failures in the 1930s in the League of Nations. So go ahead and get your paper and pencil out and get ready to take some notes. Pause the video if you need to write this down still. Okay, the first thing we want to look at is the impact of the World Depression on the work of the League of Nations. So in 1929, we had the stock market crash. If you need to get more about this, please look in Chapter 10 notes, and you can find out all the information about the stock market crash and how it worked. But the biggest thing that you really need to know is that millions of Americans were unemployed, and millions of people are living in poverty. When the United States is crashed, even though they were still in isolation, it really affected the whole world. I want to point out this, I find this political cartoon very cool. This is the global banking system. So when the American banking system crashes, everything is crashing. Okay, if you see, this one was done in 2008. So it's actually talking more about the 2008 stock market crash, but that's okay. It basically, everything crashes. Europe, federal system, economic growth. Although there was isolationism, there was still trading going on. People still see what's going on. There's lots of problems happening, and basically things are dying. So then we have some powerful countries like Japan and Italy that were really wanting to make sure they can expand their empire, to make sure they get a hold of new economies and make sure everything's fine. And then we have the League of Nations. Since they're worried about their economy, they're also worried about imposing sanctions. So economic sanctions is the not trading. And so they're really worried about not trading with Japan and Italy. They need that trade in order to make their commerce work. So when you don't trade with another country, it also hurts your country as well, because you actually need those things that you're trading with them, or you wouldn't be trading with them to begin with. And like I say, the Wall Street crash, when it crashed, it didn't just hurt America, it hurt everyone. Other people couldn't trade things. They see what's going on. Other people panic in their stock market, and just it basically sets the whole world into a spin of depression or economic depression. And as a result, people become very depressed. Germany was unable to pay their loans. People were getting really upset. They were looking into things, and so overall, people after 1929 were more concerned about their own country. And as soon as you're more worried about your own country, you're not worried about the security of other people. Therefore, the collective security goes down. If you need to review collective security, please go back to the previous notes. Okay, or the notes before the previous notes. So everyone is really worried what's going to happen. So the first thing that happens, so anyway, pause here if you need to take the notes, if you haven't taken them down already. So pause, and we'll go over to the next slide, and then you can find out the first thing, bad thing that happens. Okay, so we have three major failures that happen. The first one is Manchuria. Happened in 1931, so it was pretty much really quick after the stock market crash. So first I want you to look at the map and see what we're talking about. Here's Japan over here. Here is China over here, all of this. And we have this area, Manchuria, that is part of China. Okay, now basically, in hindsight, we know for sure that Japan was trying to expand their markets into China. So what they did is they blew up a railway, one of their own railways that's running through China, and they blame it on the Chinese. And so they say, okay, now we can invade because they attacked us first. Of course, Japan did it to themselves, but they still blame it on China. And so they annexed, or they took Manchuria and said it's part of ours. Now, of course, the Chinese don't like that, so they appeal to the League and say, hello, this is, a violation. Please do something about it. Now, please remember that Japan is one of the permanent members in the League of Nations, so in the council they have a veto. So they basically said, Japan said, nope, we're vetoing it, we disagree with you. And so this is the first time that a permanent member is really taking advantage of their power. And so a commission was set up called the Linton Commission. That's right here, the Linton Commission. And they set up to investigate. Okay? Now, this investigation took forever. Okay? It took 2 years to determine that Japan was guilty. Okay? And then what they did is they sailed all the way around from where they were meeting to Japan to give the verdict. Okay? Now, mind you that what happened is when they got their verdict, 1933, the dates aren't working out. But anyway, so this is the way the story's always gone. So anyway, I guess it was beginning of 32, end of 33. That could be easily 2 years rounded. So don't worry about that. So what happened is when Japan gets the mandate that they are guilty and they need to leave, the Japanese said, yeah, whatever. I don't believe in you. I don't agree with you. We're out of here. And Japan and all his entourage in the League of Nations basically get up and they walk out and they quit the League of Nations. So by the end of 1933, then Japan was out of the League of Nations. Okay, so then everyone starts thinking, Japan was a permanent member. Now they've quit because they don't like it. And it basically starts making everyone think, what's going on here? So anyway, pause these notes, pause this video, go ahead and take the notes, and then we'll go on to the next page to see what happens as a result of it. Okay, so next we're looking at Abyssinia crisis. So I have a big map here so you can kind of see this is Africa. Here we've got Egypt. So I hope you're with me where we are. Here's Greece and Turkey. Right over here would be Italy. And here is Somalia right now. And here is Ethiopia. And that is the area called Abyssinia. So if we look over right here, here's a legend of it was actually going on. So here is Abyssinia here. Now, please note this said Somalia Italiana. So that means that this was owned by Italy, making it very easy. Here's also Italiana. Here's also owned by Italy, making this very easy for Italy to come in here and attack Abyssinia. So, Mussolini, so in case you don't know this, if I haven't told you already, back in the late 1800s, the Italians had already gone into Abyssinia to conquer the area, but they lost, and they lost really bad, and they were very much humiliated. What had happened is that when they lost, the Abyssinians cut the Italians' hamstrings. So that is on the back lower part of your leg. That is your hamstring. And if you cut that hamstring, you actually cannot walk. And they cut both hamstrings of all the Italian soldiers that they basically allowed to live. And then you can only crawl. So basically these people are more or less forced to crawl back to Italy and bring the shame on that they have lost horribly. So then in 1936, after a few years after Manchuria, Mussolini realizes, well, I can basically do whatever I want. I am one of the people that have a veto, and I want to take over Abyssinia. For one thing, I want to avenge. The other thing is I want the lands that we need here in order to expand, in order to be able to live. So 1936, they come in and they capture the area. Now, Britain and France think, oh, okay, Mussolini, maybe you shouldn't do this. It's not very nice. So first they try their moral persuasion, the moral condemnation. And basically what happened is then they'd say, okay, well, since you're not going to stop, we're going to stop trading with you. But the things they traded with them, they aren't things they really need. They did sanctions on the arms sales, rubber, and metal. Now, please remember also, if you're not a member of the League of Nations, you don't have to do the economic sanctions. You could trade with them anyway. But what they didn't do is they didn't close the Suez Canal. Right here is the Suez Canal, and this is the biggest way for people to get from Italy. You go through the canal, you come through here, and then you get here. So they said, we won't trade with things that you don't really need. So arms sales, yeah, maybe, but if you have enough arms, you don't need more arms sales. Um, and so, but you can still go through here. If they would have stopped them from going here, they could not resupply themselves. So basically, all the League was doing is just saying that please, please, please don't, because of course they don't wish to also fight. And so they basically, Britain and France secretly give Abyssinia to Italy. He basically got what he needed. And that was done in the Hora-Laval Pact in 1935. They allowed him to stay. I need to check those dates. Oh, by 1936 he'd occupied the capital. There we go. 35 they invaded, 35 they gave it, 36 he basically had the entire capital. Okay, so one of the biggest problems with this, although the fact, again, the League of Nations is showing they don't really care about anything outside of Europe. In Manchuria, they didn't care about Asia. Now here, they're not caring about Africa. But Hitler then took this opportunity while the world was looking at Abyssinia in order to march into the Rhineland and recapture the Rhineland. We'll talk more about this in Chapter 5. And because of all of this, then Hitler and Mussolini signed an agreement called the Rome-Berlin Axis, which actually is what made them totally allies together. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. If you need to pause here and finish taking these notes, please do so. Okay, so then in the Disarmament Conference, it's actually a precursor to those other two, but it's really important to show. In 1932, basically what happened is the Germany, they met to agree on size limitations of tanks and prohibit things. But they didn't actually show signs of actually doing it. They say we're going to limit tanks, chemical weapons, bombing of citizens, civilians, but when they actually came down to it, they didn't stop the chemical weapon factories. So, you can't have chemical warfare, but when they don't make people stop the chemical weapon production, that kind of makes it so it doesn't really work. And they still had planes. That should be a plane right here, not plans. They have planes capable of bombing the towns and things. So we have a question. Germany said, okay, let's think about this, guys. They go away and they say, let's think about this. Do we want to disarm, or do you guys want to disarm down to my level, or should I go ahead and rearm up to your level? And so that way we're all at a nice, lovely, equal playing ground. But, Germany decided on his own because he couldn't actually get a real answer. And he said, okay, then I am going to arm up to everything. And then we're going to that way we'll all be even. So everyone kind of thought about that and had a little discussion about that. And then what happens is when they say, nope, that's not going to happen, Germany ups and leaves the Disarmament Conference. He basically looks at what Japan did by leaving the League of Nations. And in 1933, Germany says, you know what? This is ridiculous. I am out of here. And he leaves the League of Nations. He just joined in 1926, and then in 1933 he turns around and leaves after Japan already leaves. But then later, in 1935, Britain actually kind of agreed that Germany needed to build some of its stuff, and they make a pact together, and it increases the German Navy up to 35% of the size of the British Navy. And we will discuss that also more in Chapter 3. I want you to just take a quick look at these. We've got here our representing our leaders in our Disarmament Conference, and here's the commoners of the world, and it says, "My friends, we have failed. We just couldn't control your warlike passions." So these are the warlike passions here that, if you notice, they're sheep, and sheep do not have warlike passions. And here we have the really aggressive people that were saying, we couldn't control your warlike passions. So here we also have the world must choose at the World Disarmament Conference. Are they going to peace and prosperity through world cooperation, or increased armaments and war and poverty? And here he is straddled between the two. And of course, this is the path they choose. Okay, so what actually killed the League of Nations? Mussolini gaining prestige, Britain and France and the League were weakened, and countries decided that the League of Nations was basically just a scam. So Abyssinia and Manchuria and the Disarmament Conference was very, basically people said, this is just not going to work. So I've got a couple political cartoons. This is for Abyssinia, Japan just walking over the League of Nations. And this says face-saving duster, and so they're trying to save face from it. But basically, they're just bowing over. Here, Japan. Will the League stand up to Japan? Here he's cutting off the leg of moral authority. Okay. Here we have the League of Nations as a symbolized as a rabbit, and international strife, international fighting, as a snake to bite him. And the question is here, can the League of Nations keep a muzzle on the dog of war? And actually the answer is no. Okay, so that's all for this video. Please pause here and take these notes, and if you have any questions, let me know.